Hi, everybody. Dave DeWalt here. I'm the founder and CEO of NightDragon, and welcome to our NightVision 2026 series. And welcome, everybody. What a year it is in 2026. I always say, may we live in interesting times, and boy, are we in interesting times. I have a wonderful guest today, and I'm kind of excited because we've had many, many world leaders in cyber over the years here on NightDragon's events, and I have a wonderful human being, one of the best cyber leaders, I believe, in the world. Lieutenant General Michelle McGuinness is here with us. Say hi, Michelle, for us, if you would.
Hello, Dave. How are you?
And you're coming from where in Australia?
I'm coming from Canberra on this rainy morning, actually.
I just love the way you say it. So us Americans don't have the good Australian accent like you have it. So Canberra it is. And I guess I thought it was getting a little warmer there this time of year. No, it's still warm.
So we're coming to the back end of our summer. It's actually been quite a hot summer, but we're welcoming some rain at the moment. But I've taught more than a handful of Americans how to say Canberra.
I know. I always think it's like 4 syllables when it's really like 2. So I got now. Well, thank you for joining me. Why don't you tell everybody your role exactly? And I want to talk a little bit about the different agencies in Australia as well. And I know it's just been about 2 years in your current role. So tell everybody about that, if you would.
Yeah, that's right, Dave. Look, I've just passed the 2-year mark actually this week, but I'm the National Cybersecurity Coordinator. I do serve in the military, as you can see, with great pride, and I've done that for over 32 years. 2 years ago, I was actually brought out of a position where I was working in the US, working with the US intelligence community, and asked to take up this role, which sits within our Department of Home Affairs. Our Minister for Home Affairs is also a Minister for Cybersecurity, and it is a whole-of-nation coordination role. So it really was designed, the position was established in line with our 2023-2030 Australian Cybersecurity Strategy to really bring together the coordination of all of the arms within this ecosystem. We have our technical experts, we have our law enforcement, we have our policy, our strategy, and our supports, and then of course we have our industry partners. This is such a complex and rich ecosystem that we work in, and the government determined that there should be someone there coordinating and driving, beyond coordinating, driving the whole of government response to significant incidents. So I do oversee the response to nationally significant incidents and the consequence management of those incidents, so recovering quickly from them.
Well, very important role for somebody who's been in cyber for 25 plus years. Public partnerships, public-private partnerships, we know are everything, because it takes a village in cyber, we always like to say. And, not just public and private working together, but all of the government working together as well. And maybe just say a few more words, because I know part of CSC reports into, I think, the Signals Directorate, and then part of it in Home Affairs. And then you also have the Australian kind of police area, federal police area. Maybe just talk a little bit about the whole of government and the different agencies for a second, especially for the Americans who don't know all those acronyms.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, as you mentioned, there is no one sector or one government that can get after this alone. I think that is what is distinct about the cyber threat from a national security, stability and prosperity perspective. So we have the Australian Cybersecurity Centre within the Australian Signals Directorate, a very long history of signals intelligence and cyber security and uplift. They partner very closely in operational sense with our Australian Federal Police as well in an operational centre in there. And then we have a range of stakeholders, everyone from our Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, that, part of our strategy is a recognition that we can't be secure in an insecure region. So even working with our nearest partners in the Pacific, our Southeast Asian partners, and of course with our Five Eyes, we know that in some ways this is a whole of government effort, which is why, Dave, you and I know each other. Because it is a public-private and a coalition of the willing to get after establishing and maintaining and driving those norms as we all seek to thrive inside this platform-centric society, as we actually adopt these technologies that we should all feel very passionate about driving a more prosperous, stable, secure, the benefits we get from technology across our economy, our social services, our health. We should all expect to reap those. But of course, we need to ensure they're secure, and they also provide us that risk and vulnerability that we need to work together to close the gaps.
Well, thank you for your service. 32 plus years, amazing, and still going strong. So 32 more coming. So thank you for that. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll keep it going. Well, thank you. Let's talk a little bit, if we can. What a year it's been. I mentioned at the beginning, interesting times that we live in here. Maybe start just from the cyber perspective on the threat landscape. And we've seen a lot of different reports. I mean, CrowdStrike just came out with one. I thought there were some really interesting numbers in there, not just the rise of triple digit growth in threats around the world and breaches. When you're seeing triple digit year after year growth, it's pretty amazing to see where the threat landscape, but also more than 80% were identity related types of attacks as well, credential stealing, other types of attacks. And many of them didn't have malware that was being used as well. Maybe talk from your perspective. What do you see the global threat landscape, particularly from Australia, who sits in a very interesting place in the world as a Five Eye partner, has a lot going on as well. Maybe give me a few minutes on your perspective on the threat landscape.
Yeah, sure. And it's fascinating when we start the conversation in March with what a interesting and big year it's been, and it's only the start of March, right? Yeah. Look, the threat landscape here, it's not remarkably different to what we're seeing around the world. We are seeing a strong criminal component to it, where Australians are being scammed and having our personal details exposed, having our money stolen, romance scams, finance scams. But on the other side, we've seen, as we have across the world, quite the distinct change in our state actors as we see them shift from tactics that were representing espionage into that pre-placement. We've seen the salt and bot typhoons. We've seen those reports. We've seen that, that statecraft that is actually driving toward disrupting services or destroying them at a place and time of their choosing. So we've certainly seen the gambit of threats across the landscape. This requires a really different approach. We are building our resilience. We can't keep reacting. We're really focused on partnering to build our resilience, because we know we won't stop everything, but also how do we get ahead of, how do we align all of our arms that we can? How do we align our policy to ensure that we can be as strong and secure by design standards, by our culture? I think that people have as much of a role at the moment as technology. I think it's going to take all arms for us to drive the culture that we need to be secure and aware of the threats. I think 5 years ago, some of the threats we're facing would have been unimaginable. But telling those stories is really important to ensure that, particularly our business leaders, and I think that's what's different here, Dave, is that it's our industry leaders, our critical infrastructure owners and businesses that are on the front line of national security, that are being targeted by threat actors that wish to do harm to the state.
Yeah, and I can't agree more to that. For someone who ran Mandiant, we did thousands and thousands of breach responses, FireEye, McAfee, all my years of doing this, and now with NightDragon, it's amazing. But watching the very, very bold and audacious attacks on critical infrastructure, the danger levels are changing. There was a day when, we had viruses and Trojans and things. I used to always say at McAfee, the scariest thing was the I love you virus that would pop up and say, I love you, right? And like it was scary because it was viral, but at the same time, there wasn't a lot of threat. And here we are today with crime, as you mentioned, ransomware is super rampant all over the world. But now we're starting to see levels of danger that are much, much different. Espionage, disruption, really destruction now as well. The typhoon season, as I called it, recently was Salt Typhoon on the telecommunications side, Volt Typhoon on a lot of the utilities and energy, living off the land kinds of attacks and vectors that really could create a lot more problem than, we were used to seeing with stealing and espionage of IP. It's a different era. Talk a little bit about, if you would, this year with AI now is all changing, I feel like, in the threat landscape, because now the offense has the ability to see vulnerabilities and exploits and develop them quicker, and vibe coding really changes it. What do you see happening in the threat landscape in 2026? At least so far, and I think it's still only a couple days into March, so we're having it happen fast.
Yeah, no, look, we're seeing threat actors use AI without the safety guardrails that we're looking to impose to ensure that we adopt it securely and safely. So it is supercharging threat actors' ability to rapidly, whether it be imitate or find vulnerabilities. It is just becoming far more accessible and a lot faster. I'm not always convinced it's making it better, but this is such an open space. They say change happens very slowly and slowly and slowly until it's suddenly done. And I think this is what we're seeing with AI. Now, I'm an AI optimist, and I think there is huge opportunity here. But we are facing a threat actor who is not taking the same cautious approach that governments are used to taking, and actually it behoves us to ensure that as we adopt these capabilities, we do it securely.
So, maybe talk about recent events here. This past weekend's been an incredible environment with Iran, what's been happening U.S. and Israel on, really this last couple of years since October 7th, and what happened with Hamas and Israel, and the changes, particularly in the cyber landscape. I know I've been on quite a few calls the last few days, kind of preparing. We used to call it shields up, from a system point of view, but we're shields up in a bigger way now, with potential reciprocity of attack in the cyber domains coming from Iran and its adversaries, with a almost gloves off kind of approach because of the attacks kinetically that are occurring. How are you coordinating and how are you cooperating around the world as you think about what's just been happening the last few days in Iran? Has it changed anything for you? Has it escalated a little bit in terms of danger level for you? Like, what's changed there from a threat environment?
Yeah, look, this is where our centuries of partnership, institutional partnership around our threats in our intelligence community is so vital. So we're really relying on those partnerships and those people in those communities who are working closely with our partners around the world. Certainly, as global conflicts intensify, we do see, and major power shifts, we do see the complexity of the threat landscape increase. And this is not just about cyber threats, this is about hybrid threats, but cyber as a vector. There are so many things that we're all grappling with. And as I say, it comes back to none of us can do it alone. It's going to take all of us, which is also the foundation of our, historical alliances, where we know that we bring niche capabilities and niche accesses, and we rely on that sharing and partnership in order to defend us all, to defend those shared values and shared interests that we have.
Yeah, absolutely is the case, and never more important than when we have crisis occurring around the world than threat sharing and cooperation and coordination, because, if there's patient one, there could be patients more. So the faster we can share, the less victims we get, and that.
Completely. And this is there's no boundaries to cyber threats. There is no There's no national boundaries. There's no theatre operations. It's unlimited. It's unbound. The geography here is unbound in terms of how we can use this domain. So,
speak of boundaries for a minute, because one of the things I've been talking about for a couple of years now is this ubiquity of cyber and digital across all the domains, right? Space and air and maritime and land. Now, really, as you think about AI and quantum and these invisible domains, I mean, cyber is everywhere, not just in terms of the technology, but how we have to defend against it. How are you looking at coordinating what once was like the fifth domain called cyber domain, which is now like encompassing all domains? Is it changing in the way you're coordinating and thinking about cyber physical or cyberspace? How's that changing for you?
Foundationally, one change or one thing that we're really focusing on is that there are really simple things that as a nation, every one of us can do. And we're focusing on that for Australia. We're focusing on ensuring that people know that they can be in charge of their own cybersecurity. And it starts with individuals and ends with businesses. We haven't got all those foundations 100% right. We know that our population really thrive and enjoy using, the cyberspace and all of its benefits. But either feel intimidated by it, they feel like it's not going to happen, they have a disconnection between what might occur and what the risks are. So we're really taking a risk approach about training, and what it ultimately comes down to, it's a cultural shift. It's a shift in culture so that every person, whether it's an iPhone in your pocket or a critical system that you're running, which is a service for the nation, so you understand the risk and you know how to mitigate it and understand what the threats are. So there's quite a shift, there's quite a focus on that awareness and uplift across the nation. And we can't do that alone. The government can't do that. We partner really closely with our largest industries, and we talk to our leading business leaders about what are you doing to uplift your supply chain, to uplift your customers, to uplift your employees. And we're taking that approach that we can reach every Australian. And I think that goes with our engagement across internationally, working with so many of our providers, American providers and your providers. So working in partnership about how we're driving that security by design through technology, through IT, OT, culture, through the human behaviour, through the recognition of what is vulnerable, what is safe, what is risky.
Yeah. One more threat question, then I want to kind of turn it to innovation and kind of, like you said, AI optimism. I love your optimism there, but what is the threat area that probably is keeping you up most at night in 2026? You know, the World Economic Forum kind of came out again, misinformation, disinformation, virality of information affecting the psyche is one big area. You know, we're now watching the era of electronic warfare hitting things in a way that, you know, once was usage of malware identity credentials. Now EW is a big part of it. I mean, what's keeping you up at night from the whole of government you see?
Yeah, look, when I look at the Australian ecosystem, over the last few years, we've had a proliferation of privacy breaches, cyber incidents that result in the exposure of Australian personal details. And we were outraged by that, as we should be. This is criminal behaviour that leads to further exploitation and vulnerabilities. But actually the thing that worries me is the shift in the ability for threat actors, and ambivalent on where they come from, but threat actors who can actually impact our operational technology that prevents or disrupts or denies service delivery. Everything from food production, distribution, logistics, and of course our critical infrastructure across energy, water, health services. The rapid pace at which we're connecting our IT to our OT and its ability to actually impact our ability as a nation to access the services we need, which of course then drives concern and confidence issues around government and our willingness to really be resilient and respond when we need to something bigger. So there are some, you know, we're seeing some increasing trends on targeting manufacturing, targeting our critical infrastructure, as we're all seeing, but the impacts across this nation are significant. The potential impacts, I'll say, are significant. So that's the thing that we're really focusing on, and driving that resilience across a number of arms that we have to drive, whether it be awareness, risk management, collaboration, regulation settings, partnering in driving secure by design from IoT, driving more secure software. So there are so many levers that we're looking to pull to lift the resilience and the cybersecurity of the nation, because we can't really respond to incident after incident. This is not about responding. This is about being prepared. It's not about reacting. It's about being prepared and being stronger, more resilient, and alert and ready.
Well, I can't underscore what you just said enough, because I believe what you're calling OT, I call ICS, right? Industrial control systems or operational technology. When you sort of look at a preparedness there, you'll see what I see, which is, you know, more than 80% of our OT systems around the world are unprotected with security products. We only have about 20% of them that really have something that can detect and prevent in the protocols of OT. In the world of IP networks and, you know, the IT world, we have lots of layers of security, and yeah, we're doing everything we can. But when you look at OT, to your point, we have very little deployment globally of protection systems there. And many people think, well, they're air gap from IT to OT. And when you start to really look at it, there's not as much air gapping as you see. You know, I chair a company called Clarity. It's an Israeli company specialized in OT cybersecurity. You know, the growth rate's been high, but we still see so many attacks in this area with high repercussions to outages, because when you bring down an energy grid or you bring down telecommunications, it affects the whole of the nation. So can't agree more. And I really think we need more, I hate to call it regulation, but like more pressure to deploy in this area because of the ramifications, and more CISOs taking that ownership area, because not all the CISOs own all the OT side of security. And we need them to be thinking that way. It's one of my wishes in cyber. Do you see the same way?
Yeah, and look, my message to boards is that this is not just a CISO issue, this is a leadership issue. It's a risk issue, it's a resource issue, it's a prioritisation issue. And it absolutely, your CISO should be in the C-suite, because this is one of your top risks. And that's a big message for Australia when you think about the scale of industry. And over 90% by some measure of Australian businesses are considered small businesses. But you also, I'm part of my role is to manage and mitigate and minimise the harms and consequences of cyber incidents across our nation to keep the greatest number of Australians safe. And when I think about the consequences and the geography, Australia is not too much smaller in landmass than CONUS, which is sometimes lost, but our population is far more dispersed and far shorter, and it's a pretty short timeline between an incident in a food and grocery sector before we have numbers of Australians who we're figuring out how do we get fresh food and water to. So these are real life consequences that thankfully to date we haven't had a really significant major whole of government issue or a whole of nation incident, but we work every day to be prepared and to prevent that, through a range of mechanisms, from the deterrence, but also our preparedness and our resilience, along with our technical experts who are constantly watching and detecting and helping uplift both industry and government to ensure that it never happens.
Well, I love the map right behind you, the digital map of Australia. I've been to Australia many, many times. I'm a huge fan of visiting, and someday you'll have to teach me Australian rules football. I've been to a couple matches, but I'm still working on that one, but I'll get it one of these days.
With pleasure. With pleasure. I don't know, how about some cricket?
Yeah, some cricket as well. I'm going to work on all those sports. Let's talk about innovation. I love what you said about AI optimism. I share in that, by the way. For the first time in all my years in this market, I feel a lot of optimism that this asymmetric world we lived in for so long, where the attackers had so much advantage over the kind of defenders, can change with AI and autonomy. Talk about why you're optimistic with AI and maybe some of the innovation we're seeing today.
Yeah, look, Dave, I just share those sentiments that there is so much potential in increasing our security, our visibility, our speed in the safe adoption of AI. This is where, again, we rely on industry, government fast followers. We rely on industry to pull us through on this. But I see so much potential. I see great productivity gains and, importantly, defence and security.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, you think about, the last couple of years at RSA, I know you've been there a couple of times as well. Everybody sort of added the word .ai instead of .com to their companies. And it's like, okay, AI is coming. And last year we started to see some real AI products. Now we're seeing real agentic platforms being developed, and the ability to create an autonomous SOC where you might have had a handful of employees, or even a big company with, potentially 100 employees, now measured with zeros more, with digital employees who can help from an autonomous point of view defend, is pretty exciting to watch the advancements of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is not about clearly, and I hate to tell you things I know you agree with this, it's not about having less people, it's about having people do that which only they can do. Actually bringing that power with partnering with machines and with AI to allow us to actually focus our limited resources on that which require our intervention.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, I've always admired Australia for so many reasons, people, culture, sort of capability there, amazingly smart people. What is the country doing to help create more startup companies, more innovation in high tech? Maybe talk about some programs. I know you're involved with some of these things as well, because I think Australia could be an epicenter of innovation as well, and already is becoming. So maybe educate us on some of that.
When you talk about Australian innovation, I can't help thinking back to my heritage as a soldier, and the innovation that we've seen through soldiers through centuries, which we're quite famous for. But let me talk about what I often refer to as a jewel in our crown in our public-private partnership, which is the Executive Cyber Council, where we brought together around 30 of the top business leaders in Australia that really touch every Australian through their service delivery or their capability. We're talking a good coverage across our 11 critical infrastructure sectors and all of our service providers. We bring them together, and we sat down with them at the start of our release of our strategy and identified what are the four greatest challenges that we need to do together. I think one of the beauties of my role is that I don't buy or sell. So this is a true, genuine partnership, and it's underpinned by close sharing, authentic support, and our focus on supporting them to prevent incidents and helping them through an incident if and when that happens. This group, we identified a number of challenges. Our workforce issues in how do we have good mobility and strengthen and increase our cybersecurity workforce, but also how do we make all professionals cyber secure beyond having cybersecurity professionals. Obviously, small and medium businesses have been a huge target, and how do we uplift and strengthen them? Emerging technology was another one of our key focus areas. And then the last one was sovereign capability. Last year, as a result, that working group pulling together across industry actually convened an exhibition, a national showcase, where we brought the top innovators, cybersecurity innovators from across the country into a showcase. And then we brought the procurement leaders of those top 30 businesses and government together, and we married them together. We ran a conference and we brought them together and said, you need to know. And we had these discussions about how do you break into the supply chain? How do you, as a startup, as an innovator, how do you get the attention of a big business or a government? So this is where we really are talking to our leaders across the economy about what is your role as a leader who has a really privileged place across our economy to drive these capabilities, from sovereign capability through to national uplift and protection. And I can't be more proud. In fact, it strikes me that having spent so many decades in this uniform, I know you don't need to wear this uniform to serve your nation. And for your American audience, the word is patriotic, which is not a normal word used in Australian parlance in our culture, but it is nothing short of patriotic to see our industry leaders come together and know that this is a national security problem, that they play a role in partnering with us.
Yeah, I would just tell you, I can't be more proud, having served 5 administrations with my various roles, to partner with people like yourself. And it's quite an honor. You don't always have to wear a uniform to serve, and
Absolutely.
I just love it and so honored to do it. Talk a little bit about, you just said something really fascinating to me, because in America, we've seen an entire change to procurement, and particularly private sector selling to government. And I'm sure you've seen this, the ways in which the global primes, or in our case, US primes, sell to the government. We had a lot of certifications you had to go through, sometimes taking years to what we call FedRAMP or state ramp, or get, what's called IL5 or 6 certifications. They sell to the Department of War, and it just took forever. And a lot of that has changed dramatically over the last year with this new administration, and for the good in many cases, because now we can bring tech very quickly to the warfighter, or very quick to defense of critical infrastructure. You kind of mentioned this matchmaking you did of tech companies and procurement people. Are you doing and making changes like that? Are you seeing opportunity to make procurement changes for vendors around the world too?
Yeah, look, I think the rapid escalation of the changing threat landscape actually behoves us, and the tech landscape behoves us to stay across this. I'm not going to stand here and say we've solved the bureaucratic problem of procurement within government, but we certainly are doing everything we can to identify those innovative niche areas and that those new technologies that we don't want to miss. This is happening so fast. So initiatives like this, partnering with industry, even as you say, RSA is a great place to see where these new innovations are coming. It probably won't surprise you that, given our market size and our population, that so many Australian innovators do go to the US. We want to make sure that us remain connected, and if they have to go to the US in order to scale, then we still understand and can work with them. And of course, we partner with so many companies around the world. But I think this is a really new and innovative approach that I hope continues, where we do bring our industry leaders together and our procurement folk with our innovators so that they understand. It's also bringing them together with our higher education and research sector, sharing what are the challenges, bringing our industry leaders together to share with our researchers what are the problems that we haven't yet fixed, what are we seeing, so that our innovators can actually work on those problems that will result in tangible outcomes. It's a really exciting and dynamic space, and I think it happens through so much of the convening power that we bring together competitors and partners and industry in different sectors But this has to be, it comes back to this is a whole of nation endeavour, and there are so many opportunities, which is back to my point about optimism. I do see the opportunities, and I know that we can come together to protect ourselves against the risks and challenges.
I love your optimism. You're just amazing when it comes to that. I've made a career, honestly, finding companies and technologies, either bringing it from America to countries like Australia or all over the world, or finding them elsewhere and bringing them to America. The opportunities for entrepreneurs exist everywhere on this planet. A lot of people don't know this, but my company FireEye came from Pakistan. So the founders of FireEye were all developers in Lahore, Pakistan, and they developed this technology, and we helped immigrate them to the United States, and we built a mega company for the best of the world from a small country at that time in Pakistan. So, you know, the world's playing field for education and engineering is changing, and whatever we can do to coordinate and cooperate to bring the technology for the best of the world is ours to do together, and I'm excited about that. Last words for you, if you would. I really appreciate your time. It's so fun to see your optimism, and I don't get that many smiling cyber leaders, so you win the award for most smiles and positivity for you. I don't think you're coming to the RSA event this year. Do you have some plans to travel? Like, kind of what's happening? Are you speaking and leading anywhere in the world that we might be able to see you at?
You know, look, it's a really great question. There's a lot happening around the world that is having us relook at priorities at the moment. We spoke before about the last 5 days and the difficulties of Australia being quite a remote country and travel. So we'll see. I have the privilege of being invited to support NATO champions and speak at Prague. Again, at this stage, getting there might prove challenging. Let me have to wait and see what the next week holds. But I certainly, partnering with our partners in the US and beyond, the UK, all of our FIRE partners, and then so many other innovators is critical. You know, in our region, close region, the Pacific, but also partnering with South Korea and Japan, Singapore. You know, these are so many of us have this shared interest and shared value, and we all bring capability to the table. So the more we learn from each other, we see trends appearing in different parts of the world that we can all arm ourselves against. You know, the rapid threat sharing and blocking of things that we're seeing arise. This all relies on these open and trusting relationships, both across industry and government, but also with international partners.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Michelle McGuinness, one of the great cyber leaders. Thank you for your optimism. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your 32 years of service. Thank you for the partnership with the United States and around the world. I'll miss you at RSA. I hope you can come. I'm on the board of Delta. If you need a plane ticket from Sydney or Canberra to San Francisco, I'll help you get there. But I hope to see you soon, and stay safe, and look forward to working with you for many, many more years.
Dave, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate you.